Oh, yeah, and this year is being said after the to our great Torah, the Levaya of Dr. Matisyahu Kohen, Oliver Sholem, who was the very devoted doctor of many of us, and this year will be said Le'ilin Shmos. Good. So we were dealing with the Yichud in Kedusha of the Oros and the Keglim. In other words, the Isachtus and the Achdus of the Mekaber with the Oyer HaMashpia. And that's Ainian Ikri of the Atzmi, until we saw that the Keglim can even become the Kiyum Atzmi from the Yichud with the Oros. And we saw that was Al Derech with the Indian of Yichud and Neshama Imaguf. But we made the point here on this one that it was Naila Har B'Yeza, because of course the Neshama and the Guf remain two opposites, and yet the Chiddush is that even so they are Misachid together. Or if we take it in the Shurish Lamaila of the Yichud of the Oros and the Keglim, then that is Har B'Yeza than the Indian of the Neshama Imaguf, but it's the same basic Muvan. The same basic ikar, that they become mamish one Indian, like we saw that the guf is so misachid with the neshama that the guf actually lives from the neshama. It becomes not that she remains adova shel heper chachayim and the neshama just stoops it into movement, but the neshama is misachid with the guf, even though in certain dachastik inyanim the guf remains in a form of Misa. But that's, as I said, in Dachas Tikin Yonim, and that's in the Inifan Helem, Legabi Alakus V'chulu. But not in the Etzem Kabbalah Sashefa from the Neshama. In the Kabbalah Sashefa, then the Guf Mamish becomes a Dover Chai. And then we brought down the Dasha Mareches, the Mareches Alakus, the great early Makubal, that it's brought down in Sidus in several places, and in the works of the Rebbe Rashab. And the Rebbe also added that the Avedus HaKodesh is of the same opinion, that the Kelim of Atzilus are not a Dover Nifrad, or not a Dover Sheni, Legabi the Oires. And in Emerson, Ad Keri Kacha, the Kelim of Atzilus, the Inyan from Elakuz, that they're mamish one Inyan with the Oires, and it's not shy to say that the two Inyanim which are Misyadadim. What Lafise can come to is, Im Kain, what is the whole Inyan of Kelim, if so, and what is the Inyan of the Yichud of the Oires with the Kelim. So we saw that the Rebbe suggested two Pirushim Bazeh, and he said that we could say that the Ikar of the spheres, according to the Mareches, is that they're Oyer, and the union of Kelim Badova is the Gilui of the Oyer, the Galus of the Oyer. And the Bir Bezeh is that Oyer is by its definition Dovuk Bahamoya, and therefore it's in a state of Aliyah, Ishkalus B'Teich HaMoya, and therefore any Gilui HaOyer is Aini which is Heper Teva HaOyer. And so what causes these colors is another koyach in the gufa, which brings and is what you might call machriyach, the inyan agilui sheba'oyer. And the Rebbe brought a mime which is actually not in this chelik, it's in the Kameshis Boya, Lakamon, that according to this whole shita, as appears over there in that mime, we could say that the inyan of the Kelim, according to the Mareches, is al derech with the inyan of the Malchus shebechol Sfira, in that Drush Pasha Vayigash in Chelik Beit. What the beer is over there, like we just said, and like he mentions here, that the Spheres of Lamaila mi Malchus are Oirois beika, therefore in Yonim is Aliyah or Dveikas Klapi Maila. They're not in a state of Yerida Vagiloi. What Lafi said, it's hard to understand how do the spheres Beklal in Tikkun how do they relate and be nimshach and be mashpia, or at least misachid one with the other? Or that's one of the ike inyonim in tikkun. So the Rebbe's masber over there that in every sphera, the hainu, every oyer, how he is in the tikkun, there's this koyach hagilui sheba oyer. That works in even almost nifrad from the oyer itself, because the oyer in Yoni is a live dveikis in the moyer. So therefore, all the other spheres, chutz from spheres amalchus, all of them are really in a state of dveikis v'aliyah klape the moker, klape the ma'atzil. And there's a special koyach in each of them, which is called Spheres HaMalchus, and the Inyan HaMalchus should be called Sphera, and that really derives a koyach from a very high shorish in the Etzem HaMatzil, as we know that the shorish HaMalchus is in Reisha Delois Yada, mamish in the Atzmius of the Matzil, and that gives the koyach that the Oire should be able to be miskaleh, or the Etzem Gilui that the spheres have, one to the other. The Etzem Gilui of the Oyer, that's a special koyach miyuchad, and like he said, according to that time, we have to say that Malchus Shebechol Sphira and Malchus Beklal is like a Inyan Nifrad from the Etzem Inyan of the Oyers, and it derives its koyach not through the spheres themselves, not even in each sphera is it really a Gilui and Hemshech of that sphera itself, but it's a Gilui from a much higher Madrege, Shoresh HaMalchus. There was the Rebbe says, according to that particular shit or 3 times there, then we have to say that Malchus is really a dover nivdal, even though it's kol in the etzem sphira. It's not a dover nivdal mamish. And the Rebbe said we have to say in that gufa a difference between etzem sphiras Malchus and the Inyan of Malchus Shebechol Sphira. In other words, the etzem sphiras Malchus is already a koyach mil mailam etzem matzil was kol inyone is even lay red labia v'lahavis inyana bia. Therefore, it's a koyach nifla and a koyach nifrad she'ein kamoyo legabi the Malchus Shebechol Sphira. It's only that he's masber over there that the Malchus Shebechol Sphira is nimshach or misgala in such a way that it eventually also builds the whole Sphira of Malchus. That's what we call a famous concept, a binyan ha-Malchus. The hainu Malchus Shebechesed becomes Chesed Shebe Malchus, and Malchus Shebegvura becomes Gvura Shebe Malchus. Or that gufa indicates that what was Malchus, like the Sphira, becomes another Inyan, and Malchus becomes called Chesed Shebe Malchus. It has siman that whole Inyan for Malchus is a dover noisaf, legabi that whole principle which we just said. So therefore, the Rebbe reached a conclusion that according to the Mareches, Elohim Keni wants to say there's really no separate entity at all. Is we can't say that it's like the Inyan of Malchus, how it's kol in all the other spheres. We have to say it's like Malchus, as it is a sphera bifnei atzmo. That's how we can understand the kelim. But he's just saying that it's not really a dover nifrad, because the Marachas doesn't talk about any koyach nifrad which he calls keli. He just says it's the union of the gilui of the Rebbe said we have to say enochanami spheras Malchus, but we have to say a dogma, for example, how spheras Malchus is still kolol in Zoh. In other words, that it's kolol b'toich Zoh ad kedikach that it's still Malchus the Zoh. It's not a, but since Zoh is a whole union of Gilu Yosem Mishari Hasfiras, Kiyadur the Midas, and that's Malchus Shebezoh, therefore it's more initial Gilu than the higher spheres, the Hain of the Moichin, and it's still not the Inif and a Dova Nifred Mamish Kaviyom. It's not Nifred Cholila, but like Abi this in it's not Mamish Sphiras HaMalchus Pagoloi, but it's Sphiras HaMalchus, how it's still Kolol in the Inif and Zoh. That's how we can describe the Klolos Musag, the Kelim Lefi Dasa HaMareches. Al Choparin Lefi Zeh kommt euch that you can't really talk about two entities which are Misyached and Meir one betoichte the other, because it's really not, it's only just a koyach of Gilui. According to the Marechas, the spheres are behemoths oirois, and their Indian is only just to be in a state of aliyah or in a state of Gilui ha'oyer. But we don't really talk about another entity which they enter. The Rebbe said at the Apele, which I must say is from the Kashoyai Havana, The Rebbe said that Lafize, we have to say that there's really not a yichud of two inyonim. It occurs to the intelligent reader that it'd be interesting to know, Lafize, what is the beer according to the Mareches, according to this understanding of the Mareches, what is the beer of an Iyuv of Chayei of Chadi of Gamoy Chad, because the Gamoy are not really a separate entity here. They're really not another entity into which the oil is mislabish. Is what would be, if we talk about it as Kalim, what would be the infinity of Gamoy Chad? So we'd have to say Mashu Miyain about what we're about to say here, but that Gufa would need a Hezbollah, dak, as to how would that principle work. Upon him, the Rebbe says that the Das and Mareches is that they're not really inifan Kalim, and therefore he said they're inifan Atzmus Levad. Now this Lochem Atzmus is tricky. You'll have to forgive us spending a little bit of time on this passage, because every now and then you meet up in Ayin Beis with a passage that obviously demands a lot of careful biur, and then it flows a little bit more easier in certain places, but then in certain places, mina hechreach kitzat litmaked ba'inyan. So therefore, ain't brother but to pay careful attention to the shaynas. We hear that we should be mechavan at least according to amiktzis min ha'emes, because amiktzis min ha'emes is kekule ha'emes, kekol ha'emes. Upon him, the Rebbe says that they're the inifan atzmus levad. Now, in the early Mukubolim, including the Pardes, we find the expression atzmus v'kelim. They don't use so much in Esther Sfira Datzila the expression oyeres, but they say atzmus v'kelim. So the Pardes uses that expression very much so. So the Rebbe said we have to say that according to the Mareches, the Ike Indian of the Sfiras is what the Pardes calls atzmus. Now, but he said they're atzmus levad. They're not really atzmus v'dover noisav. Now, when he says atzmus, he doesn't mean atzmus ain't say. That's for sure he doesn't mean. But why does he call it atzmus? Because we know that the oyer is main hamoyer. The koyach hagilui in oyer, particularly oyer on a very high madrega, which is still not gilui. It's not in the madrega of gilui. Or when I say it's not in the oifen of gilui, then we're talking about a ha'ora mi'atzmus mamish. Im kol mashazer mishtameh mizeh. And therefore it's called by those Mekubalim, the oiros in the Atzilas are called atzmas. That's what they call it. So therefore, Lafia Mareches, says the Rebbe, we have to say that the spheres are, how do you call it, only atzmas. They don't really have the other part of it at all. They're only atzmas, because the Indian from Gilui is so part of the Indian of oyer, and it's so much an essential aspect of what oyer really is. So even though we go through a certain move or change to get from the atzmus into the ha'or, which is Gilui, it's very hard to talk about them as being two separate in yon, and that one is mislavish in the other. And therefore, according to him, the whole Indian is really oyer, which is atzmas, and therefore it's only, like you said earlier, Ayin from Gilui, or then he used an even harder expression, the Rebbe, Ayin from Hagloma. He said it was Ayin from the oil becoming Ayin Shal Matziyas. And that's not the Indian of Avis, Misavius Ha'oyer Nasa HaKeili, that's another Indian. Now this is in Oyer Gufa, what he called Hagloma. And he said that was like the movement into a gather of Matziyas, meaning that the oyer itself is already a Matziyas, because since it's relating to things which are Matziyas later, then it itself takes in itself a certain gather of not just Gilui HaMoyer, but Ein Shal Matziyah. Anyway, however, for Lafizeh, he said we have only atzmas. Imkain, if we have only atzmas, Vayichud is Imkain, where's the Yichud? In other words, maybe this is already a hargosha of the question, where's Iyuv Gamoy Chad? Where is that? So there was the Rebbe, Vayichud hu bi'atzmus ha'ma'atzil. The Yichud is in the very essence of the ma'atzil. Meaning, the way I understand it, if the oyer, or rather the spheres, are atzmas, pure as their gilui of the ma'atzil, and that's all they are, because Matzil is even from Atzmus, Mamish, Lagabi, the spheres, then where's the Yichud of the two koiches? We don't really have. In the Gilui of them, in the actual spheres, we don't really have another thing. So therefore the Rebbe said we have to say that inside the Atzmus HaMatzil, since he's a Gilui Mamish of Atzmus Ein Sof, then he, as it were, is koilel in himself these two inyonim in a way that they kill Mishyachid one with the other. In other words, that the oil how it is by him in Atzmus HaMatzil is so mudal and so dovu mamish in the it's beklal not begir Matthias, and then there's another inyum which wants Gilui and wants Matthias, another inyum from the reader. What in the Atzmus HaMatzil, that's already two inyonim. The way it comes out in the spheres, it's hard to say that, because that's already gone down somewhat into the Geder of Gilui. So that's a type of Gilui, and that's another type of Gilui. It's hard to be mavdil b'neihem. Or in the Atzmus HaMatzil, we could say that, there's like two inyonim which are, as it were, nuancing in a different way, mamish, like two inyonim. And therefore, the yichud is in the atzmus of an enoch hanami, not in the spheres. And for me, the ikir yichud, if we're going to say yiv v'chayev is a chiddush that in himself he's got different nuances of which we can talk of that being a yichud of one with the other, kilo inside the etzem ha'matzil. So then he says,
which level is the Matzil? It's above the
that's Atzmus Ein Sof, before the spheres. That's the pshitas of the Ein Sof, before you get to the spheres. Matzil is from the word causes them to come about. Ne'atzalim means they've been caused to come into being. You follow? The Matzil means the oil which gives rise to the spheres. But that's Atzmus Ein Sof.
So you have the Yichud above Atzilus, and in Atzilus.
In Atzilus, it's not a yichud, it's just a union of it's a ha'ora from the Ma'at. You're going to say that in a second. And it's already got in itself the two inyonim. It's got the ha'ora from the Ma'atzil, but then it's got the Gilui also. You follow? Oh, but it's not two inyonim, because that's a ha'ora b'lav, and that's another ha'ora, it's all kilo one inyan. Or in the Ma'atzil, it's two different inyonim altogether. There's some pshitas of the oil, and then there's the ability to give Gilui of the oil. And inside him, it's like, mitzad his goydel hamayla, that's like two inyonim. And therefore there's a yichud, as it were, of two inyonim. So therefore he says, atlafi seh, vada ha-yichud, ena k'moi shnei dvarim ha-mir, mishyachtim. It's not k'moi two things which have to get together, no, it's like two, how do you might call it, kavim in the atzmas, which have in themselves a certain shoini, one like the other, and therefore they unite. He said, "The imi yesh rochek erech ha'oev ha'gilui legabi b'chinas atmas ha'matzil mikol mokim hariz ha'oras ha'matzil." So he said, even though we're saying that there's a yichud of the etzem pshitas of the matzil with the ha'ora of gilui, we're saying that they kilo get together, and that ha'ora already goes down, and that's already become, as it were, a certain ha'ora. Then there's another gilui from that. Well, that's really not two inyonim anymore. Of in the matzil, so the Rebbe said, "Kum tois." That's a inyan which is rocher, a inshu gilui inside the matzil is a dover rochik mimenu. As in Cain, how can you really say that's inside the matzil? So he said, "Mikol mokim hariz ha'oras ha'matzil." It's still his ha'ora. And then we can say, you have your cake and eat it too. Mitzad echad you say it's in him, and yet mitzad sheni it's enough distant from him to be like another thing. Da'inu it's a ha'ora. Wait a minute. He said, don't jump too far. He said, when I use Beklal, the whole expression Matzil, with your so spoiled from that, he'd say that's beyond all the spheres. Gavi Amitis in your Fanelikus, that's also Achitanias. Because since it's all talking about somewhere or another getting towards the Nertzalim, and it's called Matzil, it makes the Nertzalim, then with all of its atmas and with all its milas, it's also only a that's so typical of Chassidus Chabad. It's very typical of the Rebbe Nishma Seid. It's very, very common in the Rebbe Nishma Seid's Hasbeirim that you're just sort of getting somewhere and you're just beginning to feel a little bit comfortable. Then you just thought, that's good. If you go much higher, that's also just a horrible one. You just begin to get yourself organized. And he said, in other words, the Matzil, he said, Matzil, let's bring something about. That's just a horror. And give you a mitis elakus. Oh, anyway, Al-Haponim, it's at least getting somewhere. It is close enough that we can talk about it being shayat to the Netzolim, and yet it's got the mila of being withdrawn, and therefore the Inyonim take on a more extreme attitude, the Gabiyit, and then we can talk about a Yichud. Or once they get down where they're going, they're so similar you can't really talk about a Yichud. And that's a politic azar.
Isn't the Kalim more gash the lower you go down?
Yeah, generally speaking. But since we're talking here all about ha'oras, then once you get into ha'ora gufa, and then you just have another ha'ora of it, then, but where you have something which is not shaykh ha'olinim from ha'ora, and then you do have a ha'ora, and that's what he says, rochik ha'erach mizeh, but nonetheless, they can be described as like two inyonim, that's mishyachid with that. Mashinkin, once they're both just ha'oras in different forms, it's hard to say that. In other words, that's what he's saying. That this whole thing, to talk according to the Mareches, to get to a Yichud, you've got to talk upside down. You've got to say that the Yichud of two things is more shaykh in the Edom than it is in the lower Gilui. That's killing the whole quetch. That's a politic azar. Kein yesh loima b'derech. I say nearly. The kav certainly is in that kav. But maybe we were maxing one or two of the protim of it. That's the way it goes. In other words, it's an amazing case of opposite to what you would think, to use the expression. That the yichud is really l'mayla. It's shot to about two inyonim which have to be mishyachid more in the etim than it is in the gilul. So now we go on. V'gam l'das ha'pardes. He said, even according to the pardes of the Ramak, sha'es esfiras haim b'pinus atzmus v'chelim. Oh, here we meet that expression. Now it's all over in the pardes are remaining from the Ramak. He used that expression atzmus v'chelim. That means oyer, because oyer is a gilui from the moya, and kelim are already called kelim. Well, you got two inyonim in the esespheres, and I tried to talk about a yichud because they're mamish inyonim of upon him nirim kahafochim, but the Rebbe is going to say they're not afochim either, even according to him. Mikol mochim ein a kelim legabe oyeres kerech haguf legabe hanefesh. That's for sure not. Shumu hus achala, yeah, legamrei. Like we said, if we talk about it in a more moral way, then we get not only just to it being very, very different, but we even get to it being, in a way, hafachi. Yeah, that's the Yemitis Inyan Achayim, that's the Inyan and Kilo, what you might call opposite of Chayim. And afar, said the Rebbe, Mashen came, he says, HaKelim, Harihim, Elakus Mamish, רק שזהו מבחינת כוח הגבול שבאין סייב. What the Chiddush, the Pardes and the Alter Rebbe and all the other great authorities that they talk is, their Chiddush is that sof kol sof, the Oyeres and the Kelim are two inyonim which go all the way back to the Atzmus, and the two inyonim mamish. Dahainu, koach hagilui sheba'atzmus, the koach ha'in seif, which is koach hagilui shaloi, and then there's a koach, kishem, that's the Avodas HaKodesh, and here's where the Avodas HaKodesh comes in. That the Avodas HaKodesh used the famous expression that the koach hagvuli hanimtzu mimenu rishon is dafki in the essence of the Atzilus. In other words, that the atzmus mitzad omnipotent shaloi. And that's what the Avodas HaKodesh said, that if you say he's got koach obligvo, ve'en lo koach hagvul, atam mechaser shlei musay, but the Oyeres with the Kelim is like the first meeting up of separate kaveh hagilu of those two great koachas, mitzad the etzem haklulim zeh b'zeh, or behelem zeh b'toch zeh. And in the Inyan from the Esespheres Datzilas, they become two identifiable kavim in the omnipotence of the Eibishter. The Hainu Oyer is the Gileah, Ein Seifi V'ad Gilui Shaloi, and Keil is the Koach HaGvul, which is another Inyan Kamur. That's why it comes from the Roshimo and the ganze Inyan. The whole Iyur Chayeo and the Iyur Gamoyo B'Ichale Inyan Eino is that those two things, even though they've separated off and they've each one become identifiable b'fnei atzmai, nonetheless we bring them back and we bring them into a I am a yichud, much earlier in the Atmos of Matzir, one was just behelim, but the other was what you might call balua, is the expression used sometimes in Siddur. And here they're not balua, but they both take on each its own essential characteristic, and yet nonetheless they come together, and they're misachi, the mislavish zebo. וזה יש לומר, das is the größer Chiddush of the Indian of the Esespheres, and that's what the Avedis HaKodesh says, that the Gvul HaNimtzo Mimenu Rishon, that's not the Gvul HaNimtzo Mimenu Rishon mitzad omnipotent. Mitzad omnipotence, he had Gvul the ganze, all the way down. Well, this is the first time we actually have Gvul, per se, and now we've got Bli Gvul. That's the Indian of the Spheres, is the Yichud Beinayim. But just it appears that the Rebbe understands his understanding of that in a very dachastic way, which is similar to the Mareches. And like I said in the last year, that needs a bit of a biur, exactly how we would explain Lefi Zeh, the Shitta of the Avedis HaKodesh. That would be another Indian which would need a lot of iyur. Of Al Chaponim Kein Hu Indian, he said that's the Indian of the paradise. However, you notice that he says it's a koyach hagvul. He doesn't say it's mamish gvul per se, but it's a koyach hagvul, which means, Kamavurin says, koyach hagvul means that there's some form of isgalus of gvul, but it's not mamish gvul ki pshutei. It's just that each Indian takes on its own, what you might call, identity. Over that identity can go ad ein sof mitzad the shleimus of the Atzma. Now he says, however, the Alter Rebbe's got another mahalach. The Alter Rebbe says that the Indian or the Kelim are not Atzilas. The Kelim are what we call Bria Shabbat Atzilas. In other words, the Alter Rebbe learns that the Kelim are Gvul Kipshutei. It says mashma in certain places that the Alter Rebbe learns that the Lefi Arizal, that's how we understood the Arizal, that the Kelim in Atzilas are Mamish Gvul. And therefore, he teaches the famous statement of the Pirkei HaYicholos from Rabbi Yishmael, when he said that the Shia Koima Yotze Bereshis Reish Lamed Vov Parsois, and he said Yotze Bereshis means the Indian of the Kelim Datzilas, and they got a mispah, they got like a measurement, Reish Lamed Vov Parsois. So the Alter is what's talking about till who is it to earth. What he means to say is that they are already an Indian of Gvul. V'gam l'dash Rabbeinu b'geras HaKodesh shehein b'chinas Gvul mamish, not just koyach HaGvul, but mamish Gvul. Yeah, v'kamosh koser b'mokim acher. Nonetheless, we have to say that that's al derech the meaning from the paradise. It's just more. Yeah, b'hamchoshe the Indian of the Yichud of the Eretz mit the Kelim, according to the Alter Rebbe. Mikol mokim harim b'chinas actus mamish imoyer. That's what we were. That was how do you call it? The main point of the argument with all these unbelievable developments. In the middle is the point that we're trying to say is that in kedusha, the Eretz and the Kelim are mamish b'actus gemura ze im ze. אומר לפי המערכת לא מבוי, לפי המערכת אין כמעט אין מעלומה בזה, it's mamishatas, יותר מאחtas, it's just different nuances of the same thing. לפי the parallels in particular, according to the Alter Rebbe, it's yoyse chiddush b'zeh, yoyse mufla, the koyach, which can bring to such a isat. Aber lepoyer, it's eine von achtas, ve'ein cholila, pirud b'nei klal, it's all mamish tov echor. V'zeh shekosov esav aloi chadosah, and esav aloi teisha, the famous lesson, which is brought down from the Sefer Boyer, from the not the Sefer Boyer, from the Sefer Yitzira, that the davke esav aloi chadosah and so on, sheloi lahafrid chas v'shalom bein hakelim ve'a'oiros. The be'emes hein miyuchadim. In other words, the Esespheres, that's what the Eibster wanted. Yeah, the Esespheres is bein mitzad the eretz and bein mitzad the kelim. It's all Eser bilvad. Why? Because they're all betachas hayichud, and you can't say you can count one separately from the other. Mashenkem, we're going to see in Sitracha b'diuch hafuchim advorim, that there you can talk about the actual number that you wanted and the chayes, which is machayim eskilu adover. Nifrod v'noisav aleiha. Kitza. Opio inyan yakti mashkosif shemen u'teres. Or we saw sheyesh base madregas b'shemen or base madregas b'ke teres. That's very. There was sometimes with the Rebbe. You need to remember back to what we said at the beginning of the Maimon. But if you remember in the second os, that's what we said. We saw that since the Keteris and the Menorah always went together, if he went in to light the Menorah in the afternoon or in the morning, then he was marked to the Keteris, then it's mashma that all inyonim in the Menorah nimshochim mitzad the Keteris. But since there's different times the whole year, and then as Yom Kippurim, for that we see that like 2 dagas in that gufa, so that means that 2 dagas in the Keteris. Automatically that causes 2 dagas in the Inyan HaShemen, because the Shemen we touched was nimshach mitzad the Inyan of the Keteris. So he says, "Tehine Yud Aleph Samamonim HaKeteris Hein Neged Yud Aleph Ksorin de Misabusa Ubekedusha Davke Ese Sfiris." We saw that they are Yud Aleph. Yeah, how do you call it? They, the Liuma say, they have this Indian of Yud Aleph, but in Kedusha it's Tavke Eser, Ki Ha'eres Misachti Mima Im HaKeilim, and you can't possibly say the Chayas is one thing and the Makabel is the other. K'moy Guf HaNefesh, HaNefesh Misachit Im Adam, V'Aguf, V'Shneihem Nikroim Odom. Like we saw the whole beer, but the Pele, Mami said the Rebbe was Masbir, that the Yichud of the Nefesh with the Guf doesn't go directly, but it goes through a Mamutza. First of all, there's the Yichud of the Nefesh with the Dam, and then through the Yichud with the Dam, yeah, there's an ability then to be Mesachet with the Etzem Bossa of the Guf, of Al Chaponim. Through that Mamutza, they become Mamish one Inyan, V'Shneihem Nikroim Odom. Dafke then, it's tried to talk about Odom. Yeah, v'aguf chai be'etzem mi hanefesh. And that's what he's about to teach. Odom is to teach Aleph Dam, that's the lower, the higher Gili and the lower Gili, how it is in the Yinif and Etzem HaKedusha. Okay, Moikein Lamaila, Yekelim Gufa, V'oiresh Nishmosa, just like in the Dugma by the Odom, so it is Lamaila, Hu B'chinas Odom Ho, Elyoin or Odom Aleph Dam, and we saw that all over the Yim from Chokmah, where it's Ika Ha'oyer, in Atzilus, the Ika Gilui, and all in Yoneh HaGilui go through an Atolo in the Yim from Chokmah. Yeah, or Mishachadim Ima Keilim, what we saw the Bino is the Ika Haschora, the Keilim, and it becomes Iyuv HaGamai Chad, what we said that needs a beer according to certain Inyanim. Shakelim hein gamkim b'chinas kiyum atzmi. That's a very amazing beer in that lashon. Not just that they're united and they're one thing together, but the kelim are mamish taking themselves the tchuna atzmiyas of the oil till the kelim are mamish what we call they take on themselves a kiyum nitzchi. Even though they may have a matzias that began Alidei, the Gilui of the earth, and so on. But once they get it, then from then on they become Kiyum Atzmi Mitzad Atzmo. Shakelim hein gamkim Kiyum Atzmi. Ubeyoisa Miguf Vanefesh, Sharei Kelim hein Elakuz. Once the earths are in the Kelim, then they reveal, as it were, the Sheresh Atzmi of the Kelim. And the Kelim live with their own separate chayes adle hoido chadosh, as they say. It's just it's a kiyum nitchi. Uladasha mareches yesh loime shehein rak gilui ha'oyer, and that's even again. When I thought, by the way, it occurred to me that if you look in Shara Yichud V'Amunah Perek Dalet near the end, in the brackets where he begins talking about the Kelim, the Alter Rebbe, he says over there that the Inif and the Oiros are the Inif and Oiros, and he says, V'inyan HaKelim hu tzimtzum ha'oyer. Inyan HaKelim is tzimtzum ha'oyer. That's how he uses the expression over there. אבל אולי זה קצת לפי ההסבר פה, like he says that the Mareches holds that the whole Indian of the Kelim are not Kelim, they're just a certain Yerida in the oil. Then that becomes a little bit, it'd be interesting to compare the Lashain. Over there the Alter Rebbe says that the Kelim are tzimtzum ha'oyer. Look up, you'll see it over there. But יש אולי לתווך ולחבר את העניונים, אבל זה צריך זמן וביר רוחב לשבת לעיין בכל העניונים האלה. על כל פנים, that just occurred to me. שהכלים ישדם גם כן בתיים, ויש them הגוף הנפש, שהרי הכלים הם אלוקות. Mamela, they have Yomagala in the kelim, their shoyers and Mamela, they become kiyum atzmi mitzad atzmam, since so kosof they're just as much elakus as what the oiros are in another oifan. They did a yichud with the oiros, so we have to say that becomes miskala in them. Well, das amarecha sheish loim shahein rak gilu k'moy b'chinas malchus haklula b'zoh or rak haglomas. So that's a very interesting one. Yesh loim l'shitosai ayes esfiras heim atzmus levad pirush gilu atzmus. V'gam l'das ha'pardes hein elakus u'le'egeros ha'koyidesh elakus u'gvul. In other words, they're taka elakus, but the elakus is mamish the yinim gvul. V'lochein hein es esfiras oiras v'kelim yachad. And maybe it becomes a yinim fan yichud nifla, yichud atzmi. So just to be L'Shleim Heseni was for another few minutes. So we see Reish Yud Aleph Ach Besita Achra Ein Achaya Shalahem B'chinas Isachtas Imohem. The Chayas which is Machaya, the Sita Achra, is not Bisachtas Imohem. Harei, the Harei, Sita Achra Einam Kelim Lo'er Elki Klal Uklal. In other words, that even though they're makablim from the Eroki, everything has to be makabel, but they're not kalim. And therefore, even, we'll see, even in the Alter Rebbe is in Perek Kof Beis, that even where the oil is nimshet in Perek Vov, I mean, he says in Perek Vov, that even where there is a oil nimshet, but pnim yusum, it falls into a golas. It's b'teicham of it's a, even inability to express itself. It can't really make any impression on the makabel. And therefore, that's the embassy for Golas. What the immediacy from Golas is that the Dova HaYokov and the Dova HaNichbad B'yesa finds itself in a place where the Sviva doesn't react or feel any as pilots, klal from the Dova HaNichbad. I mean, that's Yini from Golas. Dehina Yadua Da'akeli Le'elakus Hu HaBitl Davke. So the whole perek is going to be mistaviv of this one Yisod. That what is the problem with the Sitra Achra? I mean, Sokosof, who makes the Sitra Achra? The Eibishter Mayel. Sokosof, it didn't come from nowhere. It came from the Eibishter. So was it attached? Why is it not a Kli Telekus? I mean, Sokosof, it's him also. Why is it not a Kli? Because he made it in such a way that it wouldn't have bittul. And if you don't have bittul, you can't be a Kli. In other words, you can be made, you can have all the makings, but if you don't have bittul, then you're not a Kli. I mean, he said that's the way the Eibishter made them, in such a way that they don't have that union from bittul. The Mashiach bottle elakus, how is a Kli elakus? Yeah, it was a bottle to him, and that's a Kli. וזהו הכלל בשיטת הקדושה, שהם בבחינת ביטול, על כן הם בבחינת כלים לאור אלוקי. So the Alter Rebbe writes over there in Perek Vov, you're familiar with the famous expression, but the Alter Rebbe says about Yidden, that even if Begoloi at this moment he's not botel, but he says, how do you call it, O Bekoyach, Betelim, O Bepoyach Mamish Kemalachim Aliena, O Bekoyach Kemoi Kol Ish Yisrael. Every Yid is ready to be bottled, even though he may not be bottled by Isahar Harega. So therefore we have to say a Yerotin, we should all become bottled, Mamish Kemoish Tzarik, and we should say a Yerotin, that those who are clearly not bottled, for some reason don't want to be, that they should become bottled Telekuz. We don't want anything more. We don't need them to be bottled, but we need them to become bottled to the Emet. That's the whole, what you might call it, that's the whole measuring stick, that's what you call it, the punchline. Yeah, the whole punchline is either you're a Kli or you're not a Kli. What is Kli? Bittul. Yeah, that's Kedusha. Yeah, therefore the Bittul Bohem, who B'chinas Bittul Yichudi La, which goes from Achimachak. No, that's not a trick. I mean, if you're mamish elakus, there's a problem to be bottled elakus. I mean, so what, like we talked about before, everything so-called is Elikus. They're Elikus Bukalui. I mean, they're just a kili of the koyach agul shebein safe. Actually, I mean, according to all the shittas, for them to be bottled, that's not such a big chiddush or baruch upon him. They teach us what it all means. They show us the way. Yeah, the kelim or tzilas, they're like the indicator. They're the what you might call the ramzor. You know, the kola inonim, the kola ilam eskulam. That if you want to know how to do things, then you got to do it the way that your chiyuv law starts off doing it. To say that even though we're a keli, nonetheless we're absolutely bottom, we're managed be him himself, just like the Eirei. Rashi's boy, Ela, he said, Gam beklolas situ kedusha. Not only in Atzilus, but in the klolas situ the kedusha, the haker ubchinas bitl, meaning that even in low madregas, it's also bottom. Yeah, the in of kedusha. It's just different gradations in bittul. In other words, that which is absolutely botel is absolutely kedusha. That was a bittul Levinske botel, Levinske kedusha. Somebody says, what's this whole thing about a Rebbe? They say, well, the Rebbe, he just botel absolutely telekus. Well, try and match that. Then you got etzema kedusha. Yes. Ein Dora, there's nothing to be said. And therefore everything he says, it just talks out Kedusha. And that's the union of a Novi. A Novi is just somebody, he takes everything literally. He's a Keli, and the Keli and Kedusha are B'Teilim Mamish Telekus. So he bottles Telekus. Therefore he opens his Keli, and it just comes out Telekus. That's amazing. Look at anything that Rebbe said. If you just study it calmly, you can just hear, you can just see Elikus. It's just so divine. Everything he said. And you look back at the other Rebbeim, you can also, but the Rebbe is just mavhil. Just have just pele niflo. But somebody asked me the other day, that. How did it come up? Somebody asked me, did the Rebbeim ever say what would happen with the Tzionis or something? I mean, that's already gone anyway. I mean, that's one in Mitzvah. Doesn't exist anymore. But, I told him that I heard from the Rebbe. Maybe I told you guys about this. That I once asked the Rebbe Rashab, why is he so against the Tzionim? Lama hu kol kach negdam? So he said, believe me, apart from other answers he gave to that, but one of the answers he said, well, believe me, there's going to come a time when they'll be shown Elikus b'muchash. They won't just see Nisim, but they'll be shown Elikus b'muchash, and they will deny it. So you will leikanan. Leikanan in Yiddish means to answer back and deny something. A machish, somebody who's machish, is in Yiddish that's called leikanan. Isn't that unbelievable? This is not a war kedusha. That's what you can see of it. They've been seeing Gil Elikus ever since this whole place got moving. They just saying no Elikus, only Goyim. Said the Rebbe, Gam beklolas situ the kedusha the haka ubchinas bitl al kein heim kli lelakus shalakus mislavish pohem b'chinas pinimias mis yached imo him, and it unites with them and becomes one with them, and the rest of it we'll leave to another time because we don't want to be messiah with a lesson that might be Eishishu or Eishishu how alasita. And if we tell you that this show is for L'Zeicha Dr. Martin's show, Ben Rivka HaKoyen, we don't want to finish off anything about it, so just the Koyach on the other side, Chas V'Shalom. Is the fire Ad Mosai. And I was misbehaving the other day in Emerson. I mean, he's kind of a zachesm with the Avish at Paul Bush, and in a way, he's not shuli. He's kind of a tremendous chesm with the Rabbeinu Shalom. because he's making a tremendous damage in the world. But he's not sure. These guys here are stuck in him the whole time. I told you about these guys, these literature fellows that went in Hanukkah to him. The Chabanish just pushed him in front of the cameras and Benedict Deriva. They never said a word. Or some of these rabbinical council guys went in. Some said, you know, what's going to be with Jerusalem, which is also a hell of a hester, but nonetheless, at least they said that. You know, what's going to be with the holy city of Jerusalem. So Bush said to them, me? He said, me? He said, it's already years that the foreign minister and the prime minister of Israel have been pushing me that this is what has to be done with Jerusalem. That's what he said to him. I heard of a guy in Bnei Brak that he's got a shvager, was amongst the people that went in. That's what he said to him. Me? You're blaming me for Jerusalem? He said, this is what your foreign minister and your prime minister have been telling me and my colleagues for years. Now it's all this bluff over here. Forget it. The papers are full of it, the newspaper, and you know, he's pushing us. He wants it. He's going to pressure it. It's baloney. He's a little scorpion. What's he tried to pressure? You know, he doesn't care. He's seen it. This is what they want for years and years. They've been telling him this is what has to be. So that's what he wants. He thinks, if this is what the leaders of Israel, what they say, he doesn't know all about Elikus and this and this. Everybody said, these are the leaders of Israel. This is what they say. And that's what Doug Schmidt, he went to talk with one of the senators in Washington. And he started telling him, he said, listen, he said, excuse me, but I'm a busy man. He said, B'Shem me, you know, who are you talking? In whose name are you talking? He said, Lubavitcher Rebbe. He says, oh yeah, I heard about the Lubavitcher. He's very praiseworthy man. But he said, but I don't represent the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He said, I represent the state of Israel. So he said, what do you want from me? I can only say what the state of Israel tells me to say. And they told me to say exactly the hopeful comma of what you're telling me. That's what he said to him. He said, the state of Israel is telling me to say the exact opposite of what you just said in the name of your Rebbe. So it's not the Americans oppressing Israel. It's not true. It's just a bluff that's been used all the years to make it look as if we're Nebuchadnezzar, we don't have any pool, we can't do anything, it's up to do because of American pressure. It's a terrible shekel of Gaza. He's been pressed all the years, all the American presidents, ever since Camp David and before. Now I understand a thing which I could never figure. I was there in Lamentes. I was there, Tishrei. Camp David was in the summer. The actual Camp David was in the summer, if you remember. And I was there the Tishrei after Camp David, a few weeks after Camp David. I've never seen such a Simchas Torah. The way that we spoke, we had Kishriya, the whole Simchas Torah. We couldn't understand. It was those days, big peace deal with Mitzrayim, you know, people were spoiled, peace, you know. And all of a sudden the Rebbe was saying, oh, it's terrible. So I remember there was one or two guys sitting by me, but I said, listen, you know, the Rebbe is seeing much deeper than we are, you know, what's a big, you know, what's so terrible, you know. And that's what I said. I shall tell you that. Because what is the peace with Mitzrayim? It was the whole thing. They were already working on the American presidents to what's happening now at this moment. Never knew it.
So no. Who is there? What is the reason for the Israeli Minister of State and the Prime Minister for pushing the American?
Because they wanted this ever since the 6 Day War.
Why?
Because they believed that you can't have a strong Yid when you've got Goyim in the world. Where you've got Goyim in the world, you've got to be bottled to the Goyim. If you look in all the Sikhs that are all the Yid, they always said bottle for Goyim and for Goyishkeit. Look and you see, the whole time when the Rebbe spoke about the Matzav in Eretz Yisrael, he said the whole problem is that they're still in the Golas and they're bottled for the Goy and they're bottled for Goyishkeit. Follow? And I'll tell you what it is. There's an amazing thing I heard from somebody in America that there's some big guy that he's a big millionaire in America and he's very much on the side of all the government of Ulmert, all these guys, very much on their side. And he said that what they're working for is that they're working to make Israel into a Singapore. You know, have you ever heard of Singapore? You know what Singapore is? Singapore is a little island. It's a little place that almost has no shelter, but it's a huge business center that has unbelievable business. It's just all business. Just people come and go all the time and they're making business. You ever been in Singapore? It's not far from Australia. But in Shetach it's very, very small. So this guy gave a whole thing over the internet. He gave a whole interview. And he backs it. He said that we've got to make a small Israel, which will be Tel Aviv, part of Jerusalem and a few other cities. And he said there's tremendous electronic and business knowledge in Israel. Once all the Goyim will be pleased with Israel, and they'll think that Israel is a wonderful place because it gave everything away for the sake of the Goyim. Therefore, they'll do business with Israel, and Israel will become a Singapore in the Middle East. And there'll be tremendous money for the Yidden who will actually still stay here. There'll be tremendous money, and there'll be a tremendous build-up, and there'll be a tremendous economical influence throughout the whole world on the part of the small Israeli center. He didn't say state. So that's it. That's what you're doing. Therefore, they already say that they're going beyond the Gvulis of Shishim HaSheva. They're going even smaller. That's what they want. They want all these Haredim, nothing can get out. They don't want all these Haredim. The Dreykots, the Da'at, the religion, and the whole thing. Let them all clear out. They want to make Israel into a second Singapore, and when you think about it, that's exactly what they want. They want it to be just part of a big Palestinian, complex, but it'll be a bull with a lot of knowledge and technology, and business based on knowledge and technology. All the rest of us forget it. I spoke to one of my Talmudim. Said he saw it on the internet, an interview with this guy.